Welcome to the Pitchable Story. It's a spotlight on change makers that are making a difference in the world. I'm Dory Cleesis, your host. I'm a chief marketing officer, network television producer, and champion of storytelling that breaks through the noise. And today's guest is doing just that. Terri Milton never expected to be the face of fatty liver disease. It's a silent epidemic that affects 1 in 4 people. After her diagnosis and a long health journey, she's starting to create awareness of the disease. It's a condition that's rarely talked about. She's an ambassador for fatty liver disease awareness, uses her voice to educate and advocate and inspire, and she turned her story into a national platform for change, for early detection and awareness of fatty liver disease. Terri, welcome to the program today.
Thank you so much, Dory, as I'm glad to be here this morning.
You're going to help us educate the public on what this condition is so people are aware for themselves, their families, their friends, their loved ones. So tell us, what is fatty liver disease?
Let's talk about what the liver does. So the liver is takes the food that we eat and it stores extra food. So it goes through our body, it provides nutrition, there's a process it goes through. And then is whatever is not used by the body immediately is stored in the liver to be used for later. So when you're sick, when you're not feeling well, when you have worked out and your muscles are tired and your liver then it's created to provide the nutrition or the extra energy that you're going to need during those times. So it knows that there's downtimes. Now the problem is that in our society is, bigger is better. And unfortunately, what that conveys to is when we go to a restaurant and we order food, is this plate comes out with this massive amount of food on it, and we go, "Well, this costs this much, I'm gonna eat every bit of it." And we do. And so the standard American diet has actually impacted is what happens to our liver because is we're taking in more than our body needs, is we're not acting or being active enough to be able to utilize is all the nutrition that our body is getting. And so our liver goes ahead and does what it's supposed to, which is it stores it. The problem is it's more storage, more stuff that's stored there than we could ever use because now we're sitting behind TVs, we're sitting behind desks, we're sitting behind our screens, we're not active anymore. So then once that fat starts storing in there and our liver goes, okay, well, there's a little bit too much, let me make room, and it builds scar tissue around it. So that becomes fibrosis. When that scar tissue starts forming and creating and bonding together, then that becomes cirrhosis or a scarred liver. And so it progresses. Part of what we need to do is to stop it before it does go to that fibrosis.
Well, tell me about your journey. You're so knowledgeable now, but how did you learn you had fatty liver disease?
What ended up happening was this, is that, they sent a little postcard to me and said, "Oh, by the way, your liver enzymes are increased. Thank you for your blood donation, but you need to get a hold of your doctor." And so I went, what?" And so I went to my primary care physician and he said, "Well, why don't we go ahead and send you over to a liver specialist and we'll figure out what's going on." The liver specialist ran all kinds of tests and he says, "Oh, by the way, you have fatty liver, but don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Everybody has a fatty liver. It's just what happens." And so I didn't worry about it until 2016 when I started having problems. And then in 2017, I went in for surgery to have my gallbladder removed. And when they went in, is that fatty liver I had not been worrying about, is they found out my liver was cirrhotic.
So
It's
you had from a mild, you have fatty liver, don't worry about it, to a serious condition.
definitely. And it was one of those surprises of, "Oh my gosh, what do you mean I have cirrhosis?" how do I have cirrhosis? Because I don't drink. I was overweight. I did have diabetes, as I had some of the other things going on, but I couldn't figure out how I had gotten cirrhosis. So the surgeon, when he went in to do my gallbladder removal, is he went ahead and did a couple of biopsies while he was had me open. And those biopsies showed that I had something called MASH. And I was like, what's that? Now, at that point in time when that was discovered, it was actually called NASH. So we won't get into the name changes and everything.
Okay, so the folks came together in a working group and said, we're going to call it MASH, which is?
Metabolic dysfunction-associated steatohepatitis. And so basically what that is fatty liver with inflammation. And so kind of think of when you fall and you skin your knee, and all of a sudden is it goes from being just a really sore spot that's is you start getting it starts getting red, and it gets a little bit swollen, and then when scars come in, or when it tries to heal itself, it gets kind of scarred and bumpy and lumpy and everything else. That's kind of what happens with your liver, is that your liver tries to heal itself with all that fat. And so it goes, oh, this isn't supposed to be. So it starts surrounding it, and you end up with inflammation.
Right, and this scarring is what we want to prevent. So people with fatty liver disease, if they're diagnosed, you want to get to a stage where you're being treated. So you have early diagnosis and treatment, because this scarring will create a problem with your liver to the point where you may need a transplant, which is something you did get because it
Yeah.
went on without sort of a real fixed program of trying to help you, or really early diagnosis. So going back to, why do you think that physician said don't worry about it? When was that? How many years ago was that?
That was in 1998. And it was honestly, it was the standard of care. So is that physician was telling me exactly what physicians everywhere were telling their patients, is because it was unknown at that time. Now, here's part of the problem, is that the liver is one unit in medical school. And so there are still doctors, still emergency room physicians. There's still people that are saying, don't worry about it, because um, it's the standard of what was taught and what is still being taught within medical schools. And it's not anything on the physicians. And that's why it was when you hear the word, by the way, you have fatty liver, it's for you to say, okay, well, what do I need to do? It's, as a patient, be interested in hearing a diagnosis. Don't say, well, what do you mean, don't worry about it? Okay, you mentioned this. Let me know what I need to do next.
Right. So at the time, there was not a treatment, and there is now something we can do about it, which is a great breakthrough. But tell us a bit of the story about how, when you got the scarring, it led to very severe health issues.
Oh my goodness. Um, Within a week after my gallbladder surgery, I went from having no symptoms of a compromised liver. So, my liver had been ill for a long time. So I didn't know it. It was a silent thing. I was I was tired. Every once in a while, I would have pain on the upper right side, and I thought that was my gallbladder giving me problems. Um, but there were no symptoms. And that's the scary part about liver disease, or about fatty liver disease, is that there are not a lot of symptoms showing up. Every once in a while, my enzymes would go up, but then they would come back down to normal. So the things that you normally see weren't happening. Now, as soon as I had gallbladder surgery and I had that area was kind of upset, I had symptoms. So within a week after my surgery, after this gallbladder surgery, I had gained 40 pounds of fluid in my abdomen, and that fluid is called ascites. So all of a sudden, my liver has gone from compensated without symptoms to decompensated showing symptoms. The next thing that came after ascites was, and I had to have the fluid drained. The next thing that came after that was having hepatic encephalopathy. And what that is because the liver is compromised, because the liver's not working the way it's supposed to, then toxins start building up in my blood. And as it circulates to my heart and goes on up to my brain, um, there is a couple of toxins that can break the blood-brain barrier, and one of those is called ammonia. And it is a byproduct of, something that normally is when your liver is good, is it goes through the liver eliminates it, and it goes out of the body. But when your liver's not able to function, then you're going to have some problems. And so with HE or hepatic encephalopathy, um, I would do things like, I would stare at the remote control and not know how to work it. I would, all of a sudden figure not know how to do my cell phone, okay, if somebody's calling, what button do I push? But I think the scariest time happened when I was not even a block from home, came to a stop sign, and did not know which way to go. I got lost a block from home to a home that I've been coming to for almost 40 years, and I didn't know where I was, and so I just sat there at this four-way stop trying to figure out which way do I go.
The liver is such an important organ. And at that point, you knew you had to do something. So, what happened next?
Well, as I was by that time, as I wasn't seeing a doctor, I had gone to on to be with a hepatologist, and, he put me under surveillance. So, I mean, is I had to have endoscopies. I was on medication, um, to, um to work with making sure that the toxins were being removed from my body, and, I was on diuretics to address the fluid that would build up in me. And I was on, medication to keep the pressure in my liver because as the blood was trying to get in, but it wasn't able to go anywhere, so there was higher blood pressure, and, so all there was medications that I had to take, every day on a daily basis is to just to maintain, and not even so is I was diagnosed in August of 2017. In May of 2018, um, I went in for a CT scan of my liver to make sure that everything was good, and they discovered a tumor. And that tumor was cancerous. It was something called hepatocellular carcinoma. And so not only is when your liver, which is an amazing organ, I can talk all day, along about it has over 500 functions. There's a reason why there's not an artificial liver, is because there's no way to do all the things that the liver does. But when there's scar tissue, is cancer kind of likes that scarring and can build up in it. And so that's what happened with me is they found a tumor. um, and of course, is because as I am a researcher and because I do all the things, is I knew how to read my radiology report. And on Mother's Day, I read in my radiology report that I had liver cancer. And so when you get that news, it is devastating.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. But there was a bit of respite at that point. You went on the waiting list for a liver, correct? For transplant?
Actually, is I went through the process, but I wasn't put on the transplant list yet. It wasn't until my 3rd liver tumor and after my 4th cancer treatment that I finally went on the transplant list. So when I finally went on, which was in 2020, that means that for 3 years, so from 2017 until actually August of 2017, to 2020, um, that's 3 years actually, almost exactly, is when I went on the transplant list. So before that, I was just maintaining, trying to stay healthy, changing my diet, doing all the things that I could, increasing activity. But the fact is that my liver was already too far gone. There was too much wrong with it. And so their only choice was to have a transplant. So in 2020 is actually when I went on the transplant list, and it was almost another 2 years before I did receive a life-saving, life-giving second chance transplant.
Well, organ donation is such a gift, the gift of life to someone like you that did receive it. And um, after that donation, what was life like?
Oh my goodness. Um, so when I woke up, and it was funny because is the my husband was told, oh, she's going to be intubated for probably 24 hours, and so just is she's so I was in ICU. And, Doug said within an hour after I got back to the room as they had to extubate me because I was fighting, as the tube. And so, as they said, that never happens. So already is my body was going, "Hey, she's doing better." And I woke up and it was like, "Yes." There was a marked difference. And there was hope, and I knew that I understand is that transplant is only part of the process, but I had to change everything to make sure that my liver, my new liver, my gift, that I took care of it. And so there's things that you do, there's things that you process, there's ways that you think. Um, but understand too is that for me, I had been thinking about my donor and my family long before I ever got my transplant. I knew this is that somebody was going to have to die in order for me to live. And so I had to deal with that. I had to think about that this gift was a sacrifice. It was something that um, somebody had to say yes, had to check the box, and a family had to say yes. We agree with her or his decision. And so it is so much more than just she got a liver transplant. Is it so much more because there is the before, there's the event, and then there's life after.
A transformational gift from a family, from someone, and just seeing your vibrance and love of life and excitement is just amazing, especially how it relates or compares to what you told me life was before that. And even your husband, he was a caregiver for you in those difficult times where the toxins were building up in your body. You couldn't think straight, you couldn't work. I mean, it takes a toll on the patient as well as the caregiver.
Definitely. And that's it's during that time is that my husband was caregiving for me. He would ignore his own health. And he would make sure that I didn't worry about things, and so he took on this huge, gigantic burden. Um, 3 different times he ended up in the hospital. Um, 2 different amputations because he ignored, places on his foot. One of those is he almost died from, and then he had walking pneumonia that turned into something worse and ended up in the ICU. We had to gather the family around because we didn't know if he was going to make it. All because, as a caregiver, he wanted to make sure I was okay, but he wasn't taking care of himself. Um, the role of a caregiver in the life of a patient with a chronic disease cannot be understated, and you can hear the passion.
Well, you did get that transplant. Your health improved dramatically. And then we're looking at about a year ago where something changed. There was a new drug on the market for people with MASH. And tell us a little bit about that change and how that treatment has helped people.
Oh my goodness. I have been championing Madrigal and all the things that they were doing to get a treatment available, and so had watched very closely. And so in, March 14th of last year, so of, 2024, the FDA approved, resmetirom, which is now known as Rezdiffra. And I can tell you this, is that the stories I've heard of the way that this drug works in people's lives is people with liver with fibrosis, which fibrosis is the beginning of scarring, is there's things that are building up, is that is there, and changing their liver function from being one that was compromised to moving it back to a normal. Oh my goodness, is seeing the faces of patients whose lives have been impacted, who did not even know, just kind of like with me, they didn't know anything was going on. One lady I talked to a couple months ago is her dad died of liver disease of an unknown cause. Is she has had uncles and aunts and siblings who have all been affected by liver disease. She herself had stage F3 fibrosis of the liver, and
And just to point out, it's F1, F2, F3, F4, and this new drug is given in phases where you're F2, F3 to stop the prevention, to stop scarring of the liver.
it is given to stop the progression so that they can stop it before it goes to cirrhosis. So where you're showing symptoms of advanced liver disease, there's not you can all you can do is maintain, is address the symptoms of advanced liver disease and cirrhosis. So Rezdiffra is works to stop that progression, to help the patient, to come alongside and to boost um, their body's ability to be able to fight this is but that doesn't take off the responsibility of the patient. There's things that you've got to do. Maintain your diabetes, make sure that your blood sugar is not going out of whack, so it means that you're eating the right things, that you're doing that you're being active. And so it becomes a partner in helping you help your liver to become healthy again, and that is huge.
Huge for patients. And we're talking 1 in 4. Did you ever think that this condition could affect so many people?
It's not even just 1 in 4. Um, MASH is now the number one cause for women to need a transplant. It is one of the number one causes for people to end up with HCC, or hepatocellular carcinoma. It affects not only adults, but it also affects children. There are children that are being diagnosed with it. And if you have a genetic predisposition, I'm Mexican American, and there are actually 6 genes within the Mexican American heritage that can be so out of those 16, 6 of them can affect. And so when you look at that lifestyle and genetic predisposition and what is your family history? So all of those things.
Exactly. And those people with a Hispanic heritage have more of a chance for family history to result in this disease. So it's important to know that. And what do you think this drug has done for people? Are people aware of this treatment? I know there was a recent story in Good Morning America, and really we're so thrilled that they 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 did a story on this, right? People don't talk about fatty liver disease, so they created a bit of awareness of the disease and that there was a new drug FDA approved a year ago to treat it. Has that helped a bit? Is it important that the media get on board?
It is important that the media gets on board because awareness needs to be driven. And I'm on social media, and every other thing now is fatty liver. Fatty liver. I can tell you this is in 2018. So there were 6 of us who met in San Francisco in November of 2018, and we were all patients with MASH who were fighting this disease. And it was the first time ever that patients actually spoke up. And so a dear friend put it together, is a pharmaceutical company said, okay, let's talk about the patient perspective. And we were the first ones. So we were the only ones. There was 3 of us that came out of it and said, "Okay, we're going to drive awareness, we're gonna drive education." And it felt like 3 voices in the wilderness because no one knew what we were talking about. No one knew, exactly what the problem was, "Okay, why are you doing this?" "Well, you know what? Now, it's been revealed it's epidemic." And no one knows still. So the level of awareness has not increased. There are certain language groups. I mentioned the Mexican or Hispanic nationalities of any kind, actually, as some more than others. But there's other genetic groups of people that are also impacted. So it's not just Americans, this is worldwide. So it is a worldwide epidemic that is affecting people of all ages. There's no discrimination. It doesn't matter if you're poor or if you are a CEO of one of the top companies. The risk is there, and the media needs to address it.
Okay, and you've done so much in this arena. You've spoken in Washington. Tell us a bit about your work in Washington and what points you made to kind of bring this issue forward.
Part of with what I'm doing or what I've done is definitely is participating in Hill Days, addressing and making sure that MASH or fatty liver disease, that the liver is is notated, in addition to diabetes. Is in the language that we talk about chronic diseases, that it's elevated and given attention because of how much it affects. Some of the bills that are being passed, the research for liver cancer research. So is all of that is striking and going, okay, we need to drive awareness here, not only in the general population, but also in the laws and provisions and initiatives that our government is a part of. How can we make sure that insurance companies are paying for the treatments? How can we make sure that they're addressing that there are non-invasive ways to test for this disease? That's beyond the biopsy. So there are things that we're pushing forward as advocates to make sure that I am. Um, I've gotten to speak before the FDA and for a different drug that was trying to be passed, and I blasted them and said, "Guys, this is you're saying that itching is too much. Is you're nitpicking on a drug, and yet people are dying,
Well,
and you're
thank
not."
you. Thank you for all this work that you're doing as an advocate and knowing this, it's non-alcoholic disease, right? We share that. I mean, it's a chronic condition, like you said, diabetes. And what can the patient do that gets a diagnosis of fatty liver disease? And, what are you sort of advocating for? I know you're saying early diagnosis. Is that even possible? Can we get early diagnosis of this condition and how can that help?
Yes. Okay. So a couple of things. One, if you are you most people go to their doctor at least once a year. You go to have your annual physical. Make sure that they're running a full liver panel, not a partial, just a full liver panel. And ask for either an ELF test or a FibroSure, or there's a couple of other tests. You can ask for a FibroScan. Is make sure that they're imaging the liver. That what is, especially if you have diabetes, especially if you are overweight or have been identified as obese. Don't take that as, okay, well, they're just wanting to do something else. No, is go ahead and hold on to that. And then if anything comes up as, "Oh, well, your liver enzymes are a little bit elevated," or "There's just a little bit of fat," ask more questions. Is go ahead and go that next step and say, "Okay, um, let's explore," because as a self advocate, that was what I was before I was ever a public advocate, is I had to advocate for myself. I still have to advocate for myself. And it may not be always in the fatty liver disease area, but is I have to advocate for myself. That is part of my responsibility. This is my body. I am a CEO of my body. And I get to hire the professionals who take care of me. And so that's part of being a self advocate, asking the questions and expecting the answers.
That is so important and helpful for individuals all over at every point in life. So thank you for that. I love becoming the CEO of your own body. That is amazing. And what would you like to leave us with now in terms of this condition and any other insights for patients?
There is absolutely hope. And so don't just hear the diagnosis and then hide your head and hope that it's going to change. There's hope. So just because somebody says you have fatty liver doesn't mean that this is the end. Um, you can choose the end. You can choose. And I can tell you that health is at the other end of that. But you've got to choose and make some choices and make some life changes. Secondly, is that know who you are, know who your body is. Pick out the things that make you smile and walk in that. And that becomes a huge part of everything you're fighting for. So there are hard, but there are so many more good days. And then last is that even if your disease is found late, is that there's still hope. There's still absolutely life that continues on no matter what.
Well, you are just a wonderful ambassador for patient advocacy, for fatty liver disease, for just human appreciation. So I really appreciate you today coming on the Pitchable Story to share this with us. Thank you so much, Terri.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.